After tearing my ACL in my third season at Stanford, I would transfer to Ohio State, where I had the best season of my career. And after getting drafted by the Chiefs, I would spend a couple of years in the NFL. But the shelf life of an NFL running back was short, and I knew I wanted to stay in football. Kent State and head coach Sean Lewis would take a chance on me as an unproven coach. So I would start my coaching career as the offensive coordinator for Kent State. I was just grateful for the opportunity, but there was a bunch of players on this offense that I was excited to work with. I had some weapons on the perimeter with wide receivers Deshaun Polk and Dante Cephas. But I knew that I was going to have to coach quarterback Colin Schlee a lot harder than any other position group because he was making questionable decisions and we needed our most important player to play well. I was blessed to have such a talented defense on the other hand though, and they would be able to mask a lot of the mistakes that the offense would make early on. But there was one player that held this entire team together like glue. That was running back Marquez Cooper, who was just a sophomore but was already the leader of this team. Cooper at his smaller stature had a rare combination of speed, strength, and contact balance. And his backup Xavier Williams was a phenomenal complement and would serve a key role in the goal line. And if there's one thing I knew about football, it's get the ball into the hands of your best players. After getting everyone but the tight ends involved in last week's win against Georgia State, I was looking forward to getting the ball into the hands of Keenan Orr, an extremely athletic tight end. And after he helped get us most of the way down the field, I would set up a perfectly timed tight end screen to him, and he would be able to follow his blocks all the way in for the touchdown. Quarterback Colin Schlee's questionable decision making would continue again this week. There's a reason Bill Belichick has a rule for his players to not dive near the goal line, and this was exactly why. Thankfully, our defense was good enough to hold him, and the next time we were at the goal line, I put the ball into the hands of Cooper. But it wasn't all bad with Colin Schlee. He was making beautiful throws like this one. But in the second half, Bowling Green was quickly making this a game and would cut the lead down to 4. This bubble screen would go through the defense harder than a lactose person eating a pint of Ben & Jerry's. And of course we would continue to feed Marquez Cooper with the game on the line. He would score from just a couple yards out and show his ridiculous strength and just sheer willpower on this touchdown run in the fourth quarter. Led by Cooper, we were getting ready to take on an SEC opponent. This is one of the craziest games you're ever gonna watch. Marquez Cooper was obviously the focal point of the LSU's defensive attack, so we ran a perfectly timed option read to Colin Schlee and he would be able to take it the distance to give us the early lead. However, after kicking a field goal in the fourth quarter to go up by a touchdown, LSU would drive the length of the field, and Jaden Daniels would end up scoring the game-tying touchdown to send this game to overtime. Marquez Cooper was like Thanos. He was inevitable, and the LSU defense wasn't going to be able to bottle him up for more than 60 minutes. After scoring this go-ahead touchdown, LSU wouldn't take long to go ahead and push it to a second overtime. They would score in a couple of plays, and when we got the ball, Colin Schlee did something I told him not to do, which was dive at the goal line, but it would work out. In the third overtime, both defenses would make a stand, and we would trade field goals. We found ourselves in quadruple overtime against LSU, and after the defense forced a field goal, we would take an unfortunate sack near the goal line and we were in a 3rd and 14, but Colin Schlee would roll out and find his receiver Bunton for the game-winning touchdown. After beating LSU in quadruple overtime last week, our team was exhausted, both physically and mentally, and it was showing through our offense who was struggling to throw the ball as well as get anything going in the running game. We found ourselves in Penn State territory, and on this 3rd and 13 would convert, which would end up going for a touchdown a couple of plays later, but it felt like every time we got close to Penn State, they would just answer right back. This interception just before halftime when we were trying to get some points on the board would kill our momentum. But in the second half, our crafty receiver Deshaun Polk would have the ball in his hands, and he would make something shake like a stripper. He would get us close to the goal line, and Xavier Williams would punch it in. After the defense forced Penn State to a critical field goal to keep this game into one possession, Colin Schlee would throw it into the outstretched arms of Keenan Orr, who wouldn't be able to come down with it. Penn State would go on to take a 14-point lead, and Xavier Williams would fumble at the 1-yard line, which would kill our chances of any comeback. I told him after the game, we still need you to win a MAC championship. That devastating loss to Penn State last week was thankfully an out-of-conference game, and we were still in control of our destiny. Deshaun Polk was slowly becoming Colin Schlee's favorite receiver with the types of things he can do after the catch. And after getting into scoring position, the Western Michigan DB would jump this curl, which would set them up for a touchdown. With just seconds left in the half, we would find our receiver in the flat who would score to give us the lead. We had the ball first coming out of halftime, but Colin Schlee's decision making was costing us again, and I had to seriously consider benching him. After cutting the lead to 1 with a couple of minutes left in the game, we had to get into field goal range. This tackle that would have made it 3rd and 9 was called for a face mask, and we would just center the ball with this run and kick the game-winning field goal as time expired. Our kicker, who had the wildest number, would end up being player of the game, and we were getting ready for another big battle. We started up 2-0 against Northern Illinois because of a safety, and Xavier Williams was still trying to get into my good graces after that big-time fumble against Penn State, but I ended up giving Marquez Cooper the goal line run to give us the 9-0 lead. Our defense was hitting harder than crack in the 80s and would force Northern Illinois into a field goal. But just before the half, I got a little bit too greedy as a play caller and would put our team in a bad position as Northern Illinois would be able to tie it up before the half. We found ourselves down by a touchdown in the 3rd quarter when Jashawn Polk was starting to get loose. I'm talking real loose. Like that girl that the whole football team, never mind. Polk would get us into scoring position and we would be able to tie it up, but in the 4th quarter, just when I thought Xavier Williams had learned his lesson with fumbles, he would cough it up again, but our defense would force Northern Illinois to punt, and our 2 best offensive players were hurt going into overtime, but their backups would step up big time, as Polk would bring us down inside the 10, and I would trust Xavier Williams again, and he'd hold on to the ball this time and give us the lead. Our defense would hold, and Xavier Williams was named player of the game. Even after missing most of that game, Cooper was still the number 3 rusher in the country. We had probably the worst start in college football history in this game against Ball State. After throwing an interception on the very first drive of the game that would go for a touchdown, we would throw another one on the very next possession that would also go for a touchdown. And for the 3rd straight possession, we would throw another interception. But thank you, Jesus, we held them to a field goal. So I thought to myself, why am I throwing the ball when I have Marquez Cooper and I can get the ball in his hands in as many ways as possible? He would essentially bring us all the way down to the goal line single-handedly, and Xavier Williams would punch it in to cut the lead down at 10. Just before the 4th quarter, we would have an opportunity to tie this game up, and that's exactly what we would do. And with less than 2 minutes left in the game on the line, who else do you think we would get the ball to? As Cooper would bring it all the way deep into Ball State territory. But Xavier Williams had one of the most toughest runs I've ever seen, as he was carrying dudes all the way down inside the 5. And Cooper would be the one to punch in the game-winning touchdown this week, and he would continue to carry us to victories. Surprise, surprise, Colin Schlee would start this game off with an interception that would put us down 3-0 to start this game off. And with Dante Cephas out for 2 months, Jashawn Polk was solidifying himself as the number 1 target on this passing attack. And Marquez Cooper's ability as a receiving back was big not just for us but for his draft stock. And we were handling business against South Alabama early on, as Colin Schlee would take the read option this time and take it all the way down to the 1-yard line. And you know who was going to punch it in from there. We would continue our run through the MAC, and we were getting ready for Buffalo. Our running back Marquez Cooper was on the Heisman watch list after going for over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns in just 8 games. We had the most lethal 1-2 punch in the country with him and Xavier Williams, and week after week with the game on the line, Marquez Cooper kept stepping up, and he was showing me moves I didn't even know were in his bag, as he would carry us to another victory and build his Heisman profile. We were playing in a blizzard against Akron, and naturally we were going to keep the ball on the ground, but we weren't afraid to throw it in this weather either, and Schlee would find his favorite target, Jashawn Polk. And after he got us inside the 20, we would set up this screen pass to Cooper, which would result in a touchdown that would open up the floodgates against Akron. By the time the second half came around, we were already up 37-0, and we weren't going to take our foot off the gas. We would continue to be aggressive, and we were trying to make a statement to the rest of the MAC. This offense is a juggernaut, and no one's going to slow us down. Our defense was complementing our high-powered offense. I felt like the only team that could really beat us was ourselves. And the biggest thing we had to do to win this conference was avoid self-inflicted wounds. This game started off with a Megatron type of catch. Our number 2 receiver Button went up and took the ball off the defender's head. Our stud running back Marquez Cooper would bring us all the way down inside the 10-yard line, but unfortunately we'd have to settle for a field goal. Even though our offense was moving the ball down the field with ease, we weren't able to score at will against Miami. And on this 4th and goal, we'd get stuffed at the 1-yard line, but with just a couple seconds left in the half, Keenan Orr would be able to squeak in for the touchdown. Miami had a pretty good defensive plan, but when push came to shove, our offense was clicking at the right times, and our tight ends would step up big time, as they would account for every single touchdown of ours this game. But we couldn't celebrate for too long, because we had the biggest game of the season next. We were playing for the conference championship in this game against Ohio. After going down 3-0 early, this interception by Ohio would put them up 10-0 to start this game off. Jashawn Polk would incredibly come down with this ball, but we'd only be able to settle for 3 of our own. This terrible read just before the half would result in an interception by Drizzy Drake, who take it all the way for the touchdown. This big time throw by Colin Schlee to a receiver I didn't even know was on our team with 20 seconds left was huge. We were down by just 7, but Colin Schlee must have had money on Ohio because he just kept throwing the ball to them instead. We were down by 2 touchdowns at this point, and our team lost all of its spirit. I probably shouldn't have complimented the tight end so much last week because they were playing terribly, and soft-ass Colin Schlee was complaining about shin splints as we were down by 21 in the 4th quarter. This throw was our last chance to make it respectable, but we got embarrassed by Ohio. But the number 3 receiver in the class would commit to us. We were taking on a Power 5 school in our bowl game, and the much more talented Florida State was surprisingly underwhelming. I'm sure Florida State fans can relate with that. But I just think our team was so embarrassed from that loss to Ohio that we turned it up to a new level. Marquez Cooper, who was clearly the team MVP, was doing everything for us. We were able to handle Florida State to give us our 11th win of the season, the second 11-win season in school history. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, because soon after the game, our head coach was offered the head coaching position for Maryland, and Coach Lewis would take that opportunity since it paid a lot more and was a Power 5 gig. And even though I was young and only had 1 year of experience under my belt, I was surprised that Kent State didn't elevate me to head coach, and honestly I was a little offended. I had 3 options at the end of the season, the first of which was the head coaching position for Rice, and next was OC at my alma mater Stanford, or I could just stay at Kent State as the OC. Let me know in the comments what you think I should do, and please subscribe if you got this far.